Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Mindsets podcast. Today I'm joined by a man called Ollie, who I'm going to hand over to in a moment to do his own introduction. But first and foremost, I'm still your host, Angus Cook, and we've been here for over 45 episodes now. I believe this is the 46th, and we're just telling another interesting story. So I don't ramble on, Ollie, please take the mic away from me and introduce yourself.
So my name is Ollie Russell. I am a personal trainer, currently coaching a lot of people in the Hyrox space. Quite a few people doing like Ironmans, ultras, and that kind of space with all the fitness racing. Came from a bit more of a CrossFit background, so I think the word is hybrid, which everyone's saying at the minute, but I call it adult PE.
Adult PE, I think, is the right way of looking at it. And for those that are listening to this, Ollie is actually wearing an Ironman hat, so we will end up talking about that, I'm sure, at some point. But that also ties into the YouTube being a place to go and watch things. The first thing that we do on this podcast is we don't actually go into the depths of Ollie's career or anything like that. We like to do show and tell. So for those guys that aren't watching, don't worry, I'll do an audio description. But Ollie has brought something along and I genuinely have no idea what it is. It's been hidden from me the entire time. And he's going to show it to us and hopefully it gives us a bit of an insight into maybe what he's been up to and a bit about his personality.
Okay, definitely a bit about my personality. So...
Oh, wow.
I brought my budgie smugglers along, which this is my logo. Okay.
Yeah. Enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Russell
Right,
Performance Training. It sounds a bit cheesy and stuff like that, but there's a picture of my dad who is like a massive role model, hero, whatever you want to call it. And it was when him and my mum went on their first holiday. And he came from like a rugby background, which I'm sure we'll talk about with myself playing rugby. And there's a picture of him standing on the beach in a pair of budgie smugglers, tensing. Obviously, my mum taking the camera and taking the picture of him. And he's in good nick. But I then later on was like, oh, I want to try and like do the same kind of picture and like at the same kind of age. And then just ever since doing that, it is on my social media somewhere. I'll probably try and send it to you. Where it's like me and my dad side to side. I think he was 25 in it and I was 23 in the one I took. And I'm in Greece and he was in Greece. And just put a picture of us side by side. And then just ever since then, I've just enjoyed wearing budgie smugglers.
I mean, it's quite a bold statement. A couple of episodes back, we had Harry, who also is a big fan of budgie smugglers.
Oh, good man.
Are you wearing those in the British waters at any point, or are you just saving them for like warm holidays?
This is for anywhere I go, where I do quite a bit of swimming as well, obviously with like all the Ironman stuff. So if it's open water swimming and it's like during winter time, I'm wearing a wetsuit, but these are underneath. But yeah, when I'm doing like my interval sessions over at the local pool, I'm wearing these, and usually people start going into the other lane, so it's quite good because I get the lane all to myself then, and they're like, this guy's a bit weird, so we'll give him some space.
They can't have read the thing on the back where it says enjoy the journey, otherwise they'd just be right behind you the entire
That's it. Yeah. They honestly see it, and I see the lifeguards looking down like, oh, not this guy again, please go away. But yeah, I keep showing up. So
well, in that you hinted at your dad and the kind of rugby thing. Let's then jump back to where kind of sports started for you. So as far as I'm aware, from what you have told me before we started recording this, you were playing rugby from a young age, kind of inspired by your dad, but also you weren't just doing rugby, were you?
No. So from God knows what age into every single sport, going through school, I wasn't really the academic type. Struggled with like, I never really got diagnosed, I don't think, with dyslexia, but I definitely was. I had like readers in my exams and all that kind of stuff, but just loved sport. So sport from basketball, rugby, athletics, cricket. I just would do absolutely everything back at school. But the ones that I started to kind of like, as you get a bit older, you have to kind of start to pick which one you want to go down if you want to be an athlete, so you can try and like kind of specialize into it. So athletics and rugby, as I went through like school into year 10, year 11, those were the two that I was doing quite a lot of. With athletics, it was multi-eventing, so I wasn't always the best at like one event. I was just okay at doing all of them and would always finish kind of like in the top 3, top 5. So multi-eventing became quite a big thing I would train for. So pentathlon when you were under 15s, that's where I went to English schools, came, I think it was 5th at English schools, where you do shot put, high jump, long jump, 80-meter hurdles and 800-meter. So you can obviously see like there's quite a wide range of things, which I think ended up benefiting me now doing all this Hyrox, CrossFit and like hybrid, that, you know, training for so many different modalities at a young age. Like you've got to be strong, but then you've also got to be fit with like the 800 meters. Then it kind of helped me like later on, and then also just helped massively with all the rugby as well. So those two kind of worked quite nicely together.
I think one of the things that's quite interesting, I spoke to heptathlete previously, Lauren, who came on, and one thing that she's found really difficult with her career as a sport is a bit like what you said. She hasn't specialized because there isn't one that she loves the most, but there isn't one that she's clearly the best at, which is cool because she's really good at all of them. But as a result, she kind of feels like she's not that good at all of them at the same time, which is kind of this flip thing. But there's also like that barrier of there's satisfaction, but there's also like no excellence in some way. Is that something that also helps you push towards rugby where you could just be really good at it?
Yeah, I think so. But you obviously go into competition because you want to win it. And definitely my mindset between what winning is to me has definitely changed. But at a young age, you want to win. So taking 5th place at English schools in the athletics, I'm a bit like, oh, well, I wanted to win it, obviously. But then I kind of looked at it and I go, oh, if you kind of look at me doing rugby and all these other sports and the guys who maybe beat me in that, they went all down into that specific sport. So I kind of went, if there was an event anywhere where you'd have to play basketball, rugby, athletics, cricket, like all these different sports, I'm not the best at one of them, but I reckon I'm up there with being like quite good at doing all of them. But I think, yeah, how are you meant to even like measure that? So I just enjoy doing all of them just because I like all the different skills and kind of like the different communities in it, because rugby is very different to athletics. Athletics is an individual sport. Rugby, you've got the team sport stuff. So I've got the best of both worlds of like in athletics, it's all on you. So it's quite nice to go, if somebody doesn't like you and you can't complain at being political, because I think in rugby, like we were chatting earlier, things can maybe get a bit like, oh, you're a good rugby player, but I don't actually like you. I'll pick the other person.
Big time.
It can maybe get a bit political like that. With athletics, you either run faster than someone or you don't. Exactly with like this new Hyrox event, you either run better than someone or you don't. So
it's pretty black and white in terms of the rules.
Exactly, yeah. So I'm sure we'll probably go into it a bit more with the rugby side of things, but I think just due to my dad being a massive rugby player, I enjoyed like the physicality of it, and I could really unleash like a lot of, I wasn't an angry child, but I could release all this kind of energy that was...
You do get pent up big time. And if we're being real, a lot of school PE classes aren't going to give you the right environment to actually let that out, whereas a competitive rugby game might do at the weekend.
Oh, massively, yeah. I just remember after every rugby game, like if I played good or played bad, I just knew I was like... I came down a level and I could actually calm down, chill out. I wasn't kind of like itchy or, you know, I don't know what the word I want to use is, but I didn't have this kind of like feeling of, oh, I've not done anything. I feel like I've really pushed myself and had a good kind of like that team bonding with your mates. I used to kind of go as deep as you've kind of felt like you were at war with your pals and you were going to the trenches, and like my dad was my coach, and like some of the pre-game speeches are like legendary. Some of the ones that I still remember to this day, and some of the lads would be like, that was like the best speech I've ever listened to. And we're like 12-year-olds or like 12, 15, and some of the things like that he'd say to us, I'm like, the other parents don't want to know this.
The thing is that I find quite interesting, when I was a very similar age in doing team sports of all sorts, like I was always someone that loved a bit of a speech to get me going. Yeah. And there were some people that I would be in the team with that would just find it hilarious. Yeah, just didn't really get it. And it showed the cloth and where it had been cut in terms of if you're actually someone that gave enough of a crap to like put the effort in and that would actually impact how you felt about it. Or you have someone here who just doesn't get it because they're here for a bit of a laugh, a bit of fun with their mates. And I will be honest here and say that the 10 people that it must have been around 10 in the team that I could see would lock in on a speech like that are the ones that went on and have either done something else serious in sport or have gone into like academy rugby through to the actual league now. You went on yourself onto academy as well, which kind of backs up you're the 11th person that I can say the same thing. But you ended up going to Leicester, is that right? Yeah,
so I actually originally was over at Worcester Warriors, I think just due to them being like the closest club. And it is a tough gig. So like if coaches like you, they like you. If they don't, they don't. And I think just the way I played, I was very much, if I was in my own 22, which for maybe people who don't know rugby terms, you're literally on your own try line. You should probably kick it out so you can give your team a bit of a breather. I'd be the one running it. I'd just want to be like, well, there's an opportunity. Like I'd always want to run it and just have the ball in my hand and just get playing. And that was not really the way they wanted to play. So they just went with another fly half or centre I used to play. They just went with someone else, and my whole world came crashing down because I thought, I want to be a professional rugby player. I've just, fell at the first hurdle. What am I going to do? And I think when you play like academy level, they record a lot of the games, and then they were quite good with it because they then gave us like all the videos and the analysis of everything. So then what my dad did, like any caring dad, is like, right, let's try and get you to another club. So we just started bumping out all my rugby videos to lots of different clubs, and Leicester, quite a few clubs came back and said, yeah, we'll at least give him like a trial. So my first experience was then to like Leicester was who I supported the most. And it was the first game I ever went to, and I remember it very clearly. Tom Varndell scored an incredible try on the wing, and it was like the length of the pitch. So then I was like, right, Leicester are the club that I want to be with eventually. So I was like, yeah, go on then. And I think we went up to a place called Bishop Burton. So with a lot of these academies, they have like attachments to schools where you can go do like pre-season training and stuff like that. So they invited us on, I think it was a week's worth of training at Bishop Burton, which I think is near Hull. It's a long time ago now, and just went up there, had a great time with all these lads, really liked what everyone was about, and just played well and trained hard, and they just kept us on. And before you know it, kind of was playing through the system before you kind of sign an academy contract. I had like Midlands trials as well, which unfortunately I didn't get into the Midlands team, which was, just again, I kind of look at it and go, it's just someone's opinion of how I play. I don't look at it as they're a better player, because I always had quite positive thoughts on myself. I was quite internally determined. I was like, yeah, I can do this. I still know I'm like, I can be with all these lads who are like also good rugby players. So ended up Leicester Tigers gave us the academy contract, moved over to Leicester, and had 2 years over there, and it was good. It was good fun, and just being in that professional environment was absolutely class.
I think it's kind of that dream for a lot of people that play sport when they're younger to actually understand that they are being, it's now their life, their sport is their life, which is really cool. But then all of a sudden, there's the flip side when it becomes a reality, which is a discussion in itself, which is, it is now your life. So all of a sudden an injury is not a good thing to have. It's not just an annoying thing. It's absolutely not a good thing to have, because it's like your career now. But also other things that happen in your personal life start to play an impact in your career, whereas it used to be, it might just mean you have a bad game, which doesn't mean that much, short term. But long term, if it's your career, that can actually have a bit of an impact if you stack a couple bad games, and it can all stem from somewhere totally different. So how was your progression, and what happened with Leicester, and why aren't you still there?
So when I moved over to Leicester and did the first pre-season, I just was thinking, this is the rest of my life, like everything's sorted, and I was just ready for it, so ready. But within a month of going over to Leicester, we had a really good good summer that year as well. So like in conditioning games and stuff, like lads are literally like having to go dunk their heads into ice buckets and things like that. And I've always thought, I want to push myself. I just enjoyed the environment. Everyone was suffering together. It was absolutely brilliant. And, you know, we were the young lads coming in, and even like the older boys, you kind of felt like you were earning your respect by pushing yourself so hard. And then they go, he's a good bloke kind of thing. But within a month of starting over at Leicester, I'd never experienced like a family member passing away. My granddad had a stroke, died, and it was like he literally lived next door to us, where our house is, and it was quite a hit to the face. You know, people die. It's a thing, obviously, and he was old. Something was going to happen eventually. But you're like, oh God, okay, yeah, that's a big part of your family just gone like that within a month. Within another month, my mum got diagnosed with breast cancer, which you wouldn't wish of anyone, but you also think you hear about it and other families going through kind of hardships and people getting cancer and stuff like that. Never ever would have thought my own family would have to deal with it. So then when that happened, that was a bit of a hit to the teeth. And how we dealt with it was, I was over in Leicester, so I was playing rugby, but I didn't actually get to see my mum not deteriorating, but like going through chemotherapy like week in, week out. My older brother was at university, and it was my youngest brother who had to like experience like my mum losing her hair, like losing her breast, and it was just awful. But I was kind of playing rugby, so I kind of look at it now and I go, I wish I was there, but my mum was like, no, you were doing your thing. So then all that kind of stuff, I don't think it affected me, because I'm quite, like I said, like internally determined, but I think it did affect me just without me realizing, which is such a strange thing, because at the moment I was just doing what I love, playing rugby. But then you'd come back and reality would hit you and you're like, oh, my mum's lost her hair, she's lost her breast. I remember one time we're at the dinner table, she just lost consciousness, and it's like, fuck, I'd run into the phone to call an ambulance. I'm like, I was like, is she dying? Is something happening? I didn't have a clue. So that was quite tough, watching your mum go through that. And then, unfortunately, a year later, my dad then got diagnosed with bowel and liver cancer. So I don't know the technical terms, if there is one, but I just knew he had it in his bowel and liver. But to go back to my mum, how we got told that my mum had cancer was my dad got us all into a huddle. Very rugby minded of him. He was always trying to make lighthearted out of like any situation. So we're all sat in the living room, got us all in a huddle, and he just said, you know, your mum's got breast cancer, and straight away was like, this is how we're going to handle it as a family. You know, we're going to get through all of this. And then he'd start not making like bad jokes, but making kind of like the lighthearted jokes, like, she's going to have to take some form of steroids, so she's going to be able to beat the shit out of all of us, so don't piss her off.
It's just to try and, I completely get that, and that's something that I've definitely done myself, because you, like, it's a serious situation, but at the same time, and I don't know if it's a British thing, but that humour needs to be brought in to kind of, it doesn't necessarily lift the mood, because you can't really lift the mood, but it almost distracts from the severity of the situation in a way that you also know you're all on the same playing field in terms of making jokes and communicating, I guess. Yeah,
I think it just, like, we were quite young at the time, so he was just trying to not make it so morbid.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to say, yes, we've got to understand that this is a life-threatening illness, but, you know, she's still here.
Yeah.
Like, we can still go have fun. We can do all these things. And when I knew, like, my dad was just such a gentleman and such a good bloke, which I can't wait to actually go into and talk about, was we're all like, he'd not been diagnosed just yet, so we're maybe about 6 months into this. Mum's massively like into her chemo treatment and just all the other stuff. It's like they're going through like 15 rounds of boxing every day, and it's hard to see, but what comes out is like her character. She's just so strong-minded, never complained. She just every day got up and she was like, right, what are we doing? And we were going out for dinner, and she got herself a wig and got herself all dressed up, and she looked lovely. And I remember she was upstairs getting ready. My dad again called us into a huddle, and I try not to choke up on this because it's a lovely thing that he did. He basically said, when your mum comes downstairs, just go up to her individually. Don't try and make it like I've told you something, and just say how beautiful she looks. And right then I was like, that is brilliant. And it was just like, that's a gentleman. That's how we should be. That's how we should act with everyone. You know, even if you kind of just make someone's day by just saying something positive, and you don't know, like holding the door open for someone. And that, from that kind of moment, that's when I kind of started being less selfish in my sporting pursuit, and started to understand like the bigger picture of, oh, it's not just me, it's everyone else around me that has also got me to where I want to be. So my mindset shifted massively from that moment. And then, unfortunately, you know, my dad then gets diagnosed with cancer, and I'm still over at Leicester playing rugby, and you're just thinking, how can this like possibly be? You take one blow, you take another, then you take another, and you're like, all at the same time when I'm trying to pursue this professional sporting career. But that's then going back to, now I look at it and go, well, stop playing victim, like stop being that person, flip it on its head and go, I'm going to learn so much from this.
Big time. I think news like that, and we actually discussed before, and I don't actually know if I've mentioned it on the podcast because there's not really an opportunity to, but in the last year, my father got diagnosed with cancer, and it is terminal, but we were given a life expectancy, which, great news, he has surpassed. But it's a bit of a weird feeling, because I think when you hear the diagnosis, you automatically think, in a morbid sense, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's very natural. And it sounds like your dad did a great job of handling that sort of situation. Is like, that is the scenario that we're currently dealing with, but we don't know what it means, and we can still have a good time now, which is the approach that I guess I have tried to take and will continue to try and take with my dad, especially hearing from you that it was a good thing, a good approach, and a good way to reinforce it. But it is a very, very difficult situation. And I think one of the hard things is, at the time that you hear about the diagnosis, it's not at its worst, obviously. And so it's knowing that something's coming and kind of having to prepare for that is one of the hardest things that you have to deal with. So yeah, I think from a mental perspective, if I look back over this last year, I feel like I dealt with that quite well when it was there, because I was fairly black and white with, okay, this is something that happens. But in reality, it has definitely taken its toll in the background of my mind. And I think you're right in that I haven't tried to play victim in this sense. In previous news and previous things that have been with my family, I've definitely played up to being the victim. But again, I've learned so much from those situations, and all the changes that it has caused in my life have ended up being positive changes, because it has shaped me as a person and has maybe actually make me act on something I should have acted on sooner, because it's like, well, life isn't, you know, it's not endless.
No.
You only get a limited amount of time. So also taking certain situations and big changes in my life in a new light, and not looking on them so negatively, because you don't have that long.
Yeah, really. 100%.
So when rugby kind of came to a closeout for you, what was that situation, and where did you then go from there?
So about halfway through, when all this was actually going on, so I signed a 2-year academy contract. I think once my dad got diagnosed, then that was just kind of like the nail in the coffin. I was losing sight of what I wanted. I didn't really know who I was in terms of where I wanted to take my life, and I just didn't really have the mindset to stick to the rugby. Lost my passion. The person who supported me the most, like my mum and my dad, are now going through this illness. And I just thought, maybe I'm in the wrong thing. And so I kind of just started thinking, I would push myself in training sessions because I really enjoyed it. But then I really started pushing myself in training sessions as a way of, now that I realise, was self-harm. I would then try and do things to basically put myself into a hospital bed. I would pass out in most training sessions. I would get upset at the end. If I knew I could have pushed a little bit harder, I would have gone, nah, you've not got it, do you? Like, it got bad. And then I started thinking, how do I earn respect? Like, I don't know why I started thinking like this, but then I started thinking about the military route. So I just thought, what's the hardest thing I can go for? And my godfather's friend was served in the Royal Marines, and I thought, well, I got chatting to him, and he said, yep, it's brutal, the training. It's, one of the hardest kind of courses you can go on to, from like that infantry level, I think they call it. So then I just thought instantly, I've never ever once thought about the military. Never once. It was all sport, all rugby. And then I just thought, right, that's how I learn respect, and that's how I can beat myself up. But when I was doing it at the time, I was like, this is going to make people proud of me. So then I started going through like the process of, went to the careers office. You go through, do different courses, like cognitive ones, and I just about passed them, which is absolutely tragic, but just about got in, skin of my teeth. And then you have your final interview and they kind of go, yep, cool, you're fit for it, when do you want to go? And I was like, as soon as possible. So I think within like 4-6 weeks, I was then over at Lympstone train station, in suit and tie with all my bags, kind of like ready to just get stuck into training. Before you do that, actually, you've got to do a PRMC course, which is like 3 days of just getting beaten up, which I loved. It was absolutely class, and that's what I thought it was going to go and be. But what I didn't think was going to be the issue became a massive issue, was like keeping on top of admin and like lack of sleep and all these kind of things that you can't really prepare yourself for. And I wasn't very good at confrontation at that moment. So if I got shouted at, I didn't deal with it very well. So I was kind of going into it very blind, but it also taught me such a massive lesson. So I ended up being, long story short, in there for, I think it was 5 to 6 weeks total, which is nothing compared to like the 32 weeks that you're meant to go and do, which I've got some mates who have gone in and served incredible careers in the Marines, and they're good lads, and we talk about this all the time. And I kind of thought, this ain't for me. Like, my knee started to kind of give me a bit of an injury. I used it as a complete get out. And I'm very confident in saying that now. If you asked me back then, I would have said, I got injured and I got medically discharged. But now I can say, no, I pushed that big time because I wasn't man enough to go and do it at the time. Which is very freeing. It's a freeing kind of feeling to go, no, it's okay that you weren't the bloke to go and complete Royal Marines training. I can happily say that, because now I've gone on and done things and really found my path with the fitness industry and really found what I love, and just being around the community of people that I want to be with. But I've got the utmost respect for lads now who go down that path, and they literally they won't stop at anything.
Well, the whole purpose of that 32-week program is not necessarily to whittle out the week, but to really, firstly, there is an element to the training and making sure you're ready for what comes next, but also to make sure that you understand what you're getting in for. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I've done it with certain jobs. Start a job and I'm just like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
I don't want to do this. And it's difficult because before you go into something like a new career, which is effectively what that is, you kind of have this impression and this ideation of what it's going to be and why it's good for you. And I mean, it's very sensible to not think why it could be bad for you, but you may end up in that situation and you realize there's more confrontation than you thought there'd be. Sleep deprivation is not a nice thing to have, and it's not a normal thing to have in a normal 9 to 5 or normal career. So having to understand all of a sudden, I don't just have to do this, 1 week at a time. I don't even just have to do it for 32 weeks. Realistically, my career looks like this, is a big thing, especially at still quite a young age to have.
Yeah, I was 18 when I went for it.
Extremely young to have to deal with that sort of life decision. So it's probably best that you did make the decision at the time you did make it. And as you said, you've now gone on and stuck to the physical side of things, but have gone the way that you enjoy, and that gives back to you the same way.
I was doing all of that for complete external validation.
Yeah, it sounds like you were kind of going, I mean, I wasn't there. It sounds like you were almost going to prove that you could, not because you wanted to necessarily. Like, I can do the Royal Marines fitness. My family will then be proud because, I've done the Royal Marines as one of the hardest training things that you could be put through.
Yeah.
And I'm then a professionally trained military individual. Sounds cool.
Yeah,
but
completely.
It only sounds cool if people care. And when you're out on the front line, no one cares anymore.
No.
Because you're you're an individual out on the front line. Your family can't text you and be like, nice one on that, by the way. It's not the same thing. So you would be going down that path for a reason that doesn't actually align with the reason the path exists in the first place.
It was self-destruct.
Yeah.
I was like, how can I put myself into so much of a hole and like just do everything for external validation and just continue going down, beating myself up for something that I didn't really believe in. It was just kind of an idea, and I went, okay, this will be good because people will think I'm hard. That was literally the thing that went through my head. And it's like, tell some of the lads who are still in, and some lads who have come out, and they're like, that is so dumb. That's so stupid.
And what's interesting is now in the space that you're in, I personally have this opinion that the fitness industry is broken because there is such a large element of external validation in the fitness industry, especially through social media, that sort of thing. There are quite a lot of people that are quite unhappy, but as a result of needing to look happy, will present themselves in that way online, which is extremely unhealthy. And there's another form of fitness where it's actually the opposite. It's not so much external validation, it's internal validation. And that is where endurance sport comes in. And you started to discover endurance events and pushing yourself still sometimes excessively far, but in a way where you were getting internal validation instead. Is that right?
Completely. So yeah, when all that kind of phase happened with, wanting to go into something that just wasn't me, and I kind of came out of it, I was like, well, what do I actually enjoy? I was like, well, I enjoy fitness. So then it was like, okay, why don't you just become a personal trainer? But before I did the personal trainer, I remember I actually came out and I watched a documentary. It was the Rich Froning documentary. So 4-time CrossFit world champion. And I remember seeing it and I just went, I want that. Like, I want to be that guy. Like, he can do everything. He was like Superman and Batman combined. So I kind of went to the local CrossFit gym, and they originally actually said like they couldn't take any more members on just because it was such a small gym at the time, and they said we've reached capacity, sorry. So then that's why I then went down to Lympstone to go do the Royal Marines training. When that didn't happen, I went, right, I've got to try again. And they smashed down the wall basically and built a bigger gym, could take on more members. I went and I just went, this is it. I'm in such a cool environment here. Within a month, I did my first CrossFit competition down on the South Coast. Loved it. Started being around the kind of people that were actually like 10 years older than me. So it was just really fun to kind of like pick these people's brains, because I also went through a bit of a period of, once my dad passed from the cancer, it was like, oh God, like I was actually going off to Ibiza with like some friends, and just got into the drinking culture, doing drugs, and I just was like, I thought I was having fun, and I was for a bit. I kind of just was like this fuck it mode. There's a time and a place for it, but then I can see how it can spiral so far out of control. So I was trying to push like the fitness stuff, but also the party life at the same time. So I was really burning the candle at both ends. So I ended up still doing the CrossFit competitions, but then still going out on the weekend. I was like, okay, I can do this. Then I went and worked in a gym and did my PT qualification, started now like actually being in the industry that I want to be in. Loved the fitness, all of that kind of stuff, still doing all the partying. And then there was like a roadblock as I started building up my hours as a PT on the gym floor. You're waking up at 5 a.m, first PT at 6, finish at the morning at 12 o'clock. I would go back home, sleep for like 2 to 3 hours midday, go back to the gym, do like, again, 5 to 6 PTs back to back, finish at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and just rinse and repeat that Monday to Saturday. Saturday would be the half day. I'd go out, get smashed on the weekend, and I just was doing that on repeat. 6 months of doing that, my head is completely spun out of control. I was going to bed literally looking at the ceiling like, I don't want to wake up, like I'm done. Don't want to be here anymore. Well, didn't go suicidal or anything like that. I just then had to have a conversation with my mum, and I was like, I've gone into something that I enjoy, the fitness industry. I'm going out with my mates on the weekend, but I can't see any progression. I was looking at older PTs who were working God knows how many hours on the gym floor, And I was like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want that. And that is the thing that I'm going towards. Like, they're absolutely knackered. And I was like, I've got to do something. COVID happened, so there's a bit of a relief then. So I'm like in this space of, is this where I kind of try and reinvent myself? And left my job during COVID, which is probably the worst time to leave any job, but also the best time mentally for me, because my mum really pushed me to stay, because she was like, you need experience. I know you hate it, and I know you're in a really bad place mentally, but you need to stay there. And we argued so much during that period, which was awful, because my dad's passed away. My mum's now bringing up 3 kids on her own. She's still recovering from cancer herself. And I was a prick. Like, I know I was, she would say, like, you know, she would give me reason, but I look back at it, I go, no, like, what I did was wrong. I was rude to you, we'd shout, we'd argue. But then I'm kind of like, it's good that I've had that, because now with a wiser head, I can look back at it and go, that's not how you're meant to be. You're meant to be like this. But if I wasn't like that originally, would that still happen like later on down the line? So I'm like, oh, I'm glad that's happened, and I've had all these cock-ups because I've learned so much from it.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's learning from those mistakes, where anyone that's gone through anything will always be like, I'm kind of glad that it did happen.
Yeah.
But I would never wish it on anyone else.
No. Yeah.
So with endurance events, as you started to discover what you wanted to do with yourself in terms of kind of not rebranding yourself, but
it kind of is.
It essentially is. Where did the idea of kind of doing some rogue things come from, and what did you end up getting into?
So, great question. Once I then basically reinvented myself, left my PT job, was like, I still want to be in the coaching industry. How do I start making money? Set up Russell Performance Training, which I just wanted something with my family name on. Some people say, yeah, you should put your name on it because it kind of is a bit of ego then. But I wanted something that represented my family, because I was like, this is what it means to me. And that's why I've got these budgie smugglers. So started coaching over at the CrossFit Solihull gym that I trained out of. Paul Witham, who's an absolute legend. I've learned so much from coaching wise, knowledge wise, and life as well. He's been through quite a lot of hardship himself, so he's kind of like almost reinvented himself, and we just have some great conversations. Started coaching out of the CrossFit gym, was doing CrossFit competitions, absolutely loving it. And then there's a time when you go, I want to do something else, or maybe push, and I love the variety of CrossFit. Hyrox then came about. They came to our gym and they ran like the Hyrox PFT out of there, and I saw what the workout was, and I was like, I think I could do all right at this, because any kind of grunt workout, I was like, I usually would win in any kind of competition. So when it was like running and burpees and all this kind of stuff, they came to our gym, they had all their banners up, and we kind of just asked, I think Paul asked, like, what's a good time, like, you know? And they were like, oh, if somebody goes under like 18 minutes, like, you know, that's like elite level. But no one's going to do that here, because we had to add 200 meters onto our run, because I think the run was 1,000 meters, but we ended up doing 1,200 because it's just our run loop. We didn't have like an 1,000 meter mark. I'm sure we could have created one, but it was just easier to do that. So I've come in from the first run. Always enjoyed kind of like the running side of things. And when I was back at Leicester, I would usually win like the fitness tests that we do, like Broncos and all of that, the dreaded Broncos. And came in, and I just keep taking more and more chunks out of this. And then they were looking at the time and going to Paul, they were like, Jesus Christ, like he's going to go under 18 minutes. And I can't remember the exact time in the end, but I went under 18 minutes, and they just said, you need to sign up to the men's pro in Birmingham. So it was maybe 6 weeks later. We didn't really know how to train for it. It's a new event, and not many people knew about it. Most people were still calling it Hyrox.
I think my phone still autocorrects that, or it puts it in all caps for some reason.
So yeah, Hyrox was the event. So it was the first Birmingham one, and you know, just going to the Birmingham one last weekend, I think they said something like, was it 1,500 people? 15,000, sorry. The one I went to was 600 to 800 one day. And we heard through, like, I don't know, whispers that there was a final and it was in Vegas. And if you won this, you'd go to Vegas. So we were all just joking around and stuff like that. You went off in your wave, and I went out like an absolute shotgun, which I did in most workouts in CrossFit as well. I was just notoriously known for just going out hard and just hanging on for dear life. Now I know pacing very well because I know my body, I know my numbers on pretty much every exercise out there and what I can hold. So pacing became a lot better, but for this Hyrox, it really wasn't. I was running into the sled bush. I had 2 guys in front of me. I just sprinted with 1 length. I thought, I'm just going to get past them, not realizing there's 4 lengths to go through. And somebody had it on camera actually, because the camera guy came over to me. He's like, oh my God, look at this guy. He's like just overtaken these 2 blokes who were in the lead. And then the marshal came over. He's like, mate, you're absolutely smashing it. You got 3 more lengths. I went, fucking what? I was like, what? And then all my friends who were watching, they were like, oh, he's completely fucked it, because they could hear me like kind of say, I've just fucked it.
Yeah.
But then your instincts kick in and it's like survival mode. You get back on the push, then it's the pull. And I kind of love that. I thrive in just like, I am like just dogging this out. There's no technique to anything, no pacing now. It's just survival mode. And as I was running around, one of the old boys from the gym, a guy called John O'Grady, who kind of look as a bit of a mentor. He's a lovely guy. And as I was running around, I'm in all kinds of pain, quads both cramping up. And he just said, you've been here before. And I just completely flipped a switch. My hairs on my arm were standing up because I kind of felt like my dad was watching. I got emotional. Like, emotion is great, I think, when you're racing in that. And I just took off. And I ended up winning my age group and secured a place in Las Vegas, which was absolutely crazy.
Imagine, it was pretty mental. Was that also a moment where, because you could tune into it, you've now done Ironman events, you can see with the hat. Is that a place that you find you revisit when you're in these events?
I think if you go searching for it, you're not going to get it. You've got to just go into it, and whatever happens, happens, which I'm sure we'll probably have a bit of a chat about this stupid burpee challenge I did. But with that, I got like a real euphoric experience, and it was incredible. It felt like I'd been on the rugby pitch again, and I had the physicality without the physicality. So I had like the emotional strain, which was incredible. That's why I enjoyed doing it. And you kind of get like your dad pop onto your shoulder, and it's like that voice in your head. So after that, I was like, right, I want to keep pushing the endurance stuff. I can't remember what order all of this stuff is, because I've just done things just to go and do them, just to see what happens. I watched some like incredible athletes, like we were talking, the David Goggins, the Ross Edgley, more recently Russ Cook, running Africa. And I just love seeing these guys doing it. And all I just go is, well, if they can do it, they literally are humans. We should all be able to do this kind of thing. So I just would start training for, I think I started training for an Ironman. I did. Then there was a story that came out, which a young lad, unfortunately, lost his life. He got beaten to death by his parents, which was only like a stone's throw away from our gym. And it was a young boy called Arthur Laminjo Hughes. And it became a massive story. And I just said to the lads, I was like, God, we should do something. Like, let's find if there's a charity or something out there. And there's the NSPCC, which I don't know exactly what it all stands for, but it helps basically. It's a young children's line where they can like call just to, speak about stuff, and they can get helped with any kind of abuse. And it was the only charity, so I said, right, let's do something. So in CrossFit, I can't remember how many workouts there are, but there's the famous girl WODs, which are all named after like hurricanes. So You got Fran, you got Helen. Fran's a 21:59 of thrusters and pull-ups. Helen, if I remember rightly, is that the 150 wall balls? Anyway, there's a lot of workouts in there. And I said, right, we're going to do all of these workouts in 12 hours. And it was around Christmas time. And we did this really fun event. We got to the gym, crack of dawn, and just started smashing out all these workouts. And we went, let's just do I think we had to do 2 every hour. But some of them are like 50 minutes long. But some of them are like 5 minutes long. So you're trying to pick and choose when to do different ones. And what we didn't realize is you end up accumulating over like 1,000 pull-ups or something ridiculous.
Jesus.
So our arms, by the end of it, you're literally having to do like one pull-up at a time, and it feels like your biceps are about to rip off. So we had like ice buckets outside, dunking our arms in, and unfortunately our t-shirts hadn't come through the post, the NSPCC ones. And this was around when Kevin Sinfield did 7 marathons back to back for the M&D charity with his friend Rob Burrow, who got diagnosed. And I just was like, right, it would have been nice to do something in the t-shirt. So I'm like, right, let's do something else. So I said to the lads, he was 6 years old. I said, let's do a marathon for every year, just back to back.
As in, not like 6 marathons without stopping, but like a marathon a day.
Marathon a day for 6 days, because I remember Kevin Sinfield was doing 7 back to back. So I went, okay, we can at least do 6 back to back. No one wanted to do it, so I was like, right, I'm going to do this. So I announced that I'm going to continue doing this charity event. Didn't train for it in very Ollie fashion, just kind of very naively was like, yeah, I can bang this out. That is probably the biggest learning lesson I've ever had in an athletic kind of thing, because I was on my own. I was working as well, so some of the marathons were early morning or lunchtime, like if I was able to kind of give myself 4-hour gap, and then the third one was at midnight. I literally started it at 11 o'clock at night, went on, and I had my watch basically burn out a juice halfway through, so I had to come back. I was updating people on Instagram going, I'm not doing it. Like, I've come in, I've just got to charge my watch for 10 minutes and I'm updating them. My foot has started to not be in very good shape.
I was going to say stopping.
Oh,
like stopping.
mate.
Some people need to take a couple of minutes to gather themselves, but more so from a mental perspective. But stopping and seizing up, because if your watch is going to charge so you can do another half-ish marathon, it's got to be, what, like 20 minutes, half an hour for that?
Yep. So I was literally 20 minutes. It's about 30 minutes past midnight. It's freezing cold outside as well. This was around, I think it was January.
In a typical working week as well.
Yeah. In a typical working week. It was like midweek or something. It was maybe a Wednesday. I charged my watch, stood up. I was like, whoa, God, this can be savage. So I've gone back out, and where I live in Solihull, just start running around the streets. It starts shitting it down. And that was when the emotional roller coaster kind of started with, I just started feeling really sorry for myself. And I was like, my foot's in so much pain. I can't do this. I can't finish it. You know, you're going to have those feelings in something like that. But I didn't know that was to come, because I've not done something on this scale. So when it came on, I played the victim role massively. And I was feeling so sorry for myself. And then I started thinking about Arthur. And I just was like, this 6-year-old lad got beaten to death, and you can't even do this challenge. And I just was like, just get a grip of yourself, and then just cracked on. Then I started thinking about my dad and everything he went through, and my mum has just started crying. It's like midnight, and well, now it's probably about 1 a.m. in the morning. Then I started thinking about good times with my dad. I started laughing, and I'm like, if somebody gets CCTV footage of this, of me running around the streets of Dorridge, they're going to think they're going to have to report it, because there's some loose man like just running around the streets like absolutely mad.
You've combined almost the perfect storm, because I know from having done enough all-nighters when I was studying at uni or whatever, that between the hours of 1 and 3, you go a bit weird.
Oh,
because you're sleep deprivation. But then also when you're doing an endurance event and you're around 3/4 of the way through a marathon, you go a bit weird. So you take the bit weird from an endurance event, you take a bit weird of the time of night, put them together. I can imagine that you would have been laughing, crying your way around Birmingham. So yeah, I mean, I assume you got through that night and then you managed to get the rest of the challenge done?
So yeah, what we did was I got through that night. My mum stayed up all night. She cooked me food. I had an ice bath. There's a picture of me sitting. I'm going to have to send this over to you. In the ice bath, I have got boxers on in it, and I'm just eating pasta at 2 a.m. And I was thinking, if I continue running, like, I don't know what kind of like injury my foot's in. Like, even just putting like the slightest pressure, I was like, well, am I just going to cause long-term damage? And I thought, right, how can I continue doing this challenge? Because the challenge isn't about me, and if I can do it, it's about raising the money and the awareness for this charity. So I was thinking, right, how can I continue doing the marathons? So then I ended up rowing the next marathon. I thought, right, I'm just going to give my foot a rest, rode the next marathon. I've never done that as well. So I was like, you know what, this can be a challenge in itself. Stupidly didn't wear any cushion.
I was going to say,
on the rowing machine.
That arse must hurt.
It was raw, very raw, not good. And that was an interesting one. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to row the next one. But what I did was I rowed that on the night, probably started at about 9 o'clock. And then the next one I rowed early in the morning. So I basically did them pretty much within like a 12-hour window of each other. But over at the gym, everyone else stepped in. So I had Paul, the gym owner, and then a bunch of other people who jumped in for like 10k here and there. CrossFit classes were going on still, and everyone's just looking at us too. We were watching Spider-Man or something. Managed to set up his laptop, and we were rowing. We did have cushions for this one, and then because the news, kind of like the local news, got hold of it, they were asking like, oh, is there people that can come get involved with the last one? And I was like, right, I'm gonna have to do this back outside again. How can we make a cool thing of it and just get everyone running together? So I basically said to like a few people, do you want to come run this? Like, I'm gonna cycle it and, you know, support everyone and get like photos, videos, all that kind of thing, so we can really push like the charity and the link. So yeah, we all met up the Drum Monkey, which is a pub local to us, and had loads of people down there for the start. Solihull Moors came up and just gave us like, it was like £500 or something in an envelope. I was like, whoa, here we go. That's incredible. And the last day was just a bit of fun for everyone to get involved. Some people jumped in from the start, finished halfway. Some people were there all the way. Some people were on bikes. I was on and off the bike quite a few times. I was like, right, you have a rest. So it was about getting the mileage done, but putting out the message more than anything. And from doing that charity event, I kind of went, oh, you know what? I know what I'm meant to be doing now. Like, I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I kind of shifted from, I'm not actually annoyed about me pursuing the military stuff, because I needed that to know, right, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. I want to go and do that kind of stuff and try and spread my passion that way.
I've got this is a good transition point actually, because I've got some listener questions that I want to ask you before we come. Well, one of the questions will point towards something else that is natural to talk about next. So for those that are unaware, this might be your first time listening to the podcast. We do the listener questions here. So before Ollie came on today and before previous guests have come on, I put up a story or something like that on the Instagram, and you guys have the opportunity to ask direct questions to the guest. Number of reasons is you guys then get to hear what you want to hear, but also I don't need to try and ask the perfect questions all the time. You guys get to do that for me. So this first question comes from Joe, and Joe wants to ask you, what's your dream event or physical achievement in life?
One that I've done, or one that I want to
one
do?
That you want to do, or one that you have done?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. There's a extreme Ironman called the Norseman. So I did the typical thing of just going on Google, typing in like, what's the toughest events out there, with a bit of variety. So there's a swim, bike, run, and this Norseman is in Norway. It's Ironman distance, so 3.8 kilometer swim, 180k bike, and a marathon run. But the swim is in like freezing cold temperatures. You're jumping off a boat in Norway to start your swim. The bike, I think it's got some ridiculous elevation, like 4,000 to 5,000 meters of elevation during it, with like crazy crosswinds. And then the run is basically finishing at the top of a mountain. So, wow. And it's
strong finish.
Yeah, they're very like you have to like go into a ballot to try and get into this event. So it's quite tough to get into. So yeah, that's one that I've thought about.
Awesome. The next question is a slightly different change of tone. It's from Alexia, asking, if you had to lose a limb, what would it be, and what sport would you do?
I would say my left arm, because I'm right-handed.
Okay.
Because I still want to be able to run and things like that. Oh, what sport would it be? It would be like the Ironmans, and like I'd probably go even bigger and try and do some crazy ultra event where, you know, you're that person who is, you know, trying to crack on through the most adverse like position yourself and try and show people like, right, you can still do this, even though, yeah, you might be missing a limb. So some crazy ultra out there, something that is quite far out.
Awesome. And I have a couple more questions. One is from a listener, so I'm going to ask that first, which is, what is your secret to training for all of these different events that you do?
So I try and keep it with, I try and train for everything at the same time, but not too much, if that makes sense. So if I know I'm going into an event and I want to push it, so I call them like my A race, my B race, my C race, or events, I'll try and keep in like the swimming once a week if I know I'm not going to be swimming, but I just want to keep topping it up. I'll keep the weights kind of like around like 3 to 4 kind of strength sessions a week. And when I know I want to go and really push something, I kind of give myself like a 12-week window. So I'm going to be doing Manchester Marathon next year. So I know, right, when I get to 3 months within that, I'm slowly building up the mileage on the running now, but I'm not going to stop swimming. I'm jumping on the bike occasionally, doing my weights in the CrossFit gym. So when I get to those 3 months, that's when I'll go a bit more specific. I might drop the swimming and the biking down and go just running, but then I know it's only 12 weeks. So then after the 12 weeks, you can start to pick up the other stuff again.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Sorry, just to mention that one was from Chris. I don't want to steal your question and not give you your shout out. I do have another question, which is actually from Ruby Lola. So you were on Ruby's podcast a year ago. She came on this podcast a little while ago, and she's a friend of the show. We're friends. I asked her if there's anything she would want to ask you, and she said, "Who the hell would want to do 48 hours of burpees?" The answer is actually Ollie, apparently. But talk us through why the hell you did 48 hours of burpees.
Well, I won't be doing it again, that's for sure. And I think, again, we were talking about like when you're searching for that kind of moment, that euphoric experience during an event, and I try and pick these hard things because I want to go through like that roller coaster. I want to know what I'm made of when shit hits the fan. So me and my younger brother were kind of coming up with things. What could I be like the first person to do, and like what is so crazy that no one else is kind of giving it a go. And like just a real challenge. So, and unfortunately at the back end of last year, the long story is a guy called Matt Gallagher, who my dad used to play rugby with, a lovely guy, got diagnosed with MND. And when we heard it, was like absolutely awful. And, you know, you wouldn't wish anyone of that. And he's such a gentleman. Every time I used to meet up with all my dad's rugby pals, after my dad passed, they would just be incredible. Like, you know, giving good advice and kind of going, if you want to get back into the rugby again, let us know. You know, we'll give you we'll give you details, and I'll get you a trial wherever. And he was always one person that said that. So when I heard this, I was like, I would like to do something. And I knew he started the Matt Gallagher Foundation, which is helping families I think mainly in the Midlands, who are going through MND, with helping them with like their housing situation, going like building wet rooms downstairs. So, and they even put a lift into someone's house. They've done some like really cool things. And I just said to Jamie, I was like, he come up with like a burpee broad jump marathon, and he said a bunch of other stupid things. So cheers, Jamie, for that. And I just was like, right, you know, burpee broad jumps, that's an awful exercise to do. No one enjoys them. So I went to Matt, met up with him, and I said, listen, the original thing was to do a burpee broad jump marathon. And I said, we could go through Guinness records. We can try and make this like a real big thing, and raise loads of money and awareness for the charity. And he was like, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, Matt, I'm the guy. And then I just was kind of saying that because it sounded quite cool. But then I left, I went, I don't have a clue how that's meant to be done or whatever, but we'll figure it out. I've kind of gone into a lot of events, very naive, and I've always kind of figured it out. So we started coming up with like how we're going to do this. The Red On guys, who are absolutely brilliant, I went up and did some fitness testing with them. We tried to kind of come up with like a training program where we can make sure my body just, you know, comes out the back end of this not injured and not with any lifelong injuries. So we come together with a great plan. And before you know it, it's the day of it. And to be honest, there wasn't much of a dull moment, was there? So it it was fun from start to finish because I had so much support around me and we raised so much money. The only downfall I would say that I would do different next time is I wouldn't go for the world record or Guinness record because it became quite stressful to try and sort out camera stuff and the standards and all of that. And it kind of, for me, I didn't want to lose touch of why we were doing it. I didn't want to do it for the world record. I wanted to do it to raise money for an incredible bloke. That was literally it. So as soon as we got started, there was no one has ever done it. Guinness kind of come up with a crazy thing and said, right, we want you to hit 30 kilometers in 48 hours. I knew straight away. I've done a 5 kilometer burpee broad jump, which was in training, and that took me 7.5 hours. And I was like, I just went, I've got to hold that pace for 30 kilometers. I went, that's not happening. That's not going to happen. So I kind of lost touch of that. And we just had a great time over the 48 hours over at the local rugby club, which I will also add where my dad's bench is at, where I first started out with the rugby. So it was a real nice touch. And there was a massive mini and juniors festival going on the last day, on the Sunday, where, we're all tired and cranky and they're all started burpee broad jumping with me. They're meant to be playing rugby games. They're like, no, we want to do this. And I was like, these kids are showing me up right now, jumping along. So to be honest, I didn't actually have a dark moment. It was just like fun start to finish and a lot of banter as well.
That's good to know. Good to know. And I was wondering, because some of those young kids might want to listen to this, the next part that we do is the 3 pieces of advice part, where essentially I'm no longer in the room. You have to pretend that you're here alone, and you're either talking to 3 different versions of yourself when you were younger, or maybe one version, you want to give them 3 pieces of advice. But what are 3 quick pieces of advice you'd give a younger version of Ollie?
Follow your passion, for sure. Whatever you enjoy most, that's the thing that's going to get you to where you want to be. If you're trying to pursue a career or sporting stuff for the external validation, it's only going to last so long. So you've got to have that internal passion, and whatever that is, that's what you got to go for. Don't listen to anyone else. That's number 1. God, got to figure 2 more. So probably number 2 is, on top of that, like, put yourself in an environment with what I experienced going to the CrossFit gym at such a young age, with like older people who were successful but also really good people. I learned so much from them. So putting myself in the environment of successful people but good people was I think not what separated me from other people, but what gave me the opportunities and where I am right now. I learned so much from them. So yeah, that would be put yourself in the right environment for sure, with older people who very successful. And number 3 would be, if I'm talking about from a training point of view, don't just like say, oh, this one exercise is the thing that's going to get me to over there. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say with the Hyrox, it's becoming quite big. Everyone's got like, oh, this is the way you train for it. Well, that might work for someone, but it might not work for you. So it's about having flexibility to go, you know what, I don't have to do it your way. I just need to find it my way. But you can start to pick from lots of different people. So if we were trying to like nail it down, flexibility of like, right, this is what I want to do. There's the blueprint of it, but you don't have to follow that. It can be your own way.
Strong advice. I like that a lot. Now, that leads us into effectively what is the last question. So the last question always comes from the previous guest, and I will follow this by asking you for your question for the next guest. It doesn't have to be serious, by the way. You can ask something deep if you really want to.
Yeah.
But you can ask something silly. So last episode, I had Toby on, who has actually just gone all in on getting going with his business to the point where he's sold everything he owns so he can go and live in a cheaper country to put more money into his business. Now, his business is called Active Explore, where they set up awesome expeditions all across the world to do crazy things, or even just relatively cool things in a cool place.
I'm gonna have to get onto that.
So his question to you was, if money was no object, where would you go for 4 months?
South Island, New Zealand, straight away. Yeah, it's where I went traveling with Jess, my girlfriend. We went to the North Island first. It was my first Ironman over there in a place called Lake Taupo. and we were told, like, just wait till you go to the South Island. And I was like, it can't be any better than this. Like, I was like just in awe. We went to the South Island, we were on the boat on the way in, and I was just looking around like thinking, this place just doesn't seem real. It just seems like something you'd see on film or something. And as we're just going through all the different places, Wanaka and Queenstown especially, two of just the most like gorgeous places I've ever been. Mountains, great people, good coffee. So yeah, it would be South Island, New Zealand.
I've always said that if I ever went to New Zealand, I don't think I'd come home.
Yeah.
And I've been upfront with friends and family, like, don't invite me to come with you, because I won't come back with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what question do you think you would ask for the next guest?
You're going into a training session, but it's a partner workout. Who are you taking? Anyone, just anyone in the world, dead or alive, okay? Who do you want in that partner training session?
Interesting. Out of interest, who would you take with you?
Jess is pointing at her. No, it wouldn't be you, Jess. Sorry. Maybe you'd be second. I would take my dad.
I was wondering if that would be the
I would take
answer.
my dad 100%. He actually was just somebody, even like later on into age, like we had a rowing machine over at our house, and it was quite ironically like placed in my bedroom, and he'd kick me out and he'd just row for an hour, and it would sound like he's having a heart attack. My nan would come into the house and she'd be like, Teresa, he's having a heart attack up there, like get him off that rowing machine. He just loved putting himself in a hole as well, and just loved that kind of like hardship about training and just what it kind of was all about. So yeah, 100% my dad.
Awesome. Well, if you guys want to listen to the next guest's response, make sure you tune in next week for that episode. Otherwise, I want to say it's a massive pleasure to have you on, Ollie, and thank you very much for sharing your story and your side of things. Where can people find you or your training if they want to reach out and speak to you about that?
So best place is probably on Instagram, Russell Performance Training. I know George, Trav and Charlie have been on this podcast as well. So with the Theta, with George's clothing brand, we're doing quite a lot of stuff. And yeah, if you see it on Theta, I'm with them quite a lot. So yeah, Russell Performance Training on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, for those that are joining today, you can find the Mindsets podcast at Mindsets_podcast on all platforms. You won't find us on with any other way. So it is that across YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Now, like I said, I hope you all tune in for the answer to next week. Well, the answer to your question in next week's episode. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.